Viewers, listeners, welcome to another episode of Blighty Talks Bricks. I'm excited about today's conversation because I think the guest I've got, we're going to be talking about something that I think gets missed out in the marketplace, especially in the new sector. And I think it's a very important aspect of the industry, and I genuinely do think it gets overlooked at times. But I met this gentleman towards the end of last year at a charity event. I probably had a 20-minute chat with him before we went to sit down for the dinner and the auction, etc. And what struck me with the guy I've got with me today was how nice he was. Just came across as just a genuinely nice individual. But as well as that, what struck me was his knowledge of the mortgage market. It really was very, very inspiring and great to listen to. So I'd like to introduce now Matt Coulson, who is the co-founder of Heron Financial.
Thank you.
Matt, thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us, and welcome to Blighty Talks Bricks.
Thanks for having me. I've got a lot to live up to with that.
Well,
intro.
One of the things when we were chatting, and I have this theme, I know you've been kind enough to watch a few of the podcasts.
Yeah.
I have this theme of sort of a little token of appreciation, and the one thing that came across very clearly was your love for the Geordie boys.
Wow.
I've got a few Geordie pals. They'll be shocked when they see me wearing this shirt. I've never worn a Newcastle shirt.
Shocked and impressed.
Shocked and impressed, yeah. I've actually always been quite fond of Newcastle. I've been up there a few times over the years to watch the Gooners.
Yeah.
So it's an absolute.
It's always a good night out.
It is. It's a great place to go.
Normally won.
We normally do okay. We have had one or two situations we've not.
Yeah, we're pretty good hosts for you.
Generally, it's always a pleasure to be there.
Yeah.
So the Geordie shirt sits well with me today. I'm not sure how I'm
going to... You look good in it.
Well, I'm not sure how I'm going to do if I have to wear a Tottenham shirt or a Man United shirt one day. We'll have to find...
That might be a stretch.
We might
That'd
have to
be like me putting a Sunderland shirt on. It just wouldn't happen. No, well, actually, I did have to do it on my stag do, and I would never do it again.
Oh, did you really?
Horrendous, yeah.
You obviously was pissed.
Well, yeah, and under duress. So.
And have you still got the shirt?
No. No, the shirt went, I think, in a bin or a fire, or both. So, yeah, it didn't last very long.
You're happy with what's going on at Newcastle at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, you've got the sort of juxtaposition of an ownership that has questions around it. You know, the sort of the government aspect, the Saudi aspect is a challenge for some people. But if you can set that aside, and I appreciate that's not an easy thing to do for everyone, then what they're doing, if you look in isolation at what they're doing for the club and for the city and the region, is tremendous. You know, it's the first time in my memory since Bobby Robson, which is the last time I had a season ticket, that the whole fan base and the club's been pulling together. So it does feel very, very different now, even though we're having a bit of a challenge at the minute. We're recording this in March. We're not having our best season, haven't had an amazing season last year.
Yeah.
I think everybody's on the same page, and that's the main thing.
So last question on Newcastle before we get to, well, serious for you, but the serious stuff
it's always
to
serious
the
on
podcast.
Newcastle.
Eddie the man for you to take you forward?
Yeah, for sure. I think he's got enough credit in the bank. You know, the pressure on him, I think, is possibly media generated as opposed to supporter generated, and that's important. So you go in away, and I've been in 2 or 3 recently. Sadly, I've been in 2 or 3 defeats recently, and it's just wall-to-wall support. So he's got enough credit in the bank with what he did last season to allow him the time to have another crack at it. And, you know, we're still making progress. You know, we probably went a step or two too far in getting into the Champions League. We weren't prepared. You know, we haven't got a big enough squad.
Yeah.
We got found out, but it was a great experience, and I think they'll all learn from it. So, yeah, he's still a man, for sure.
Well, as I say, I've got a soft spot for Newcastle, so hopefully they keep marching on.
Wow.
Moving on to the serious side, how did you get into the mortgage industry?
Well, to an extent, I was born into it. So my old man's in financial services,
right?
And that's all I ever know, all I ever can recall him doing. So whether it be the mortgage side or the protection insurance side, I kind of grew up around that. So I went off to university for 3 months.
Whereabouts?
Northumbria.
Right.
So I was close to home, which is probably why it wasn't quite as fun as it would be for other people. And just couldn't get away with it. Just thought...
You did 3 months more than me, by the way.
Okay, well, you know, my 3 months of fame. So it was okay, but I just felt, having grown up in a household where, you know, business was always part of the conversation, that I wanted to go out and work more than anything. Maybe that was kind of naivety, youthful exuberance, whatever it might be. But that was what I did. He, at that point in time, said to me, well, look, you know, I can introduce you to some people. That's the extent of this. I'm not going to get you a job. You've got to get yourself it. I'll open the door and you have the conversations. And that was it. So got a job in a mortgage business. I was the tea boy, as is often the start point. So doing the photocopy and making the tea. Lots of outbound phone calls when GDPR wasn't a thing. And that was where I cut my teeth. So did that for a while up in the northeast. Ended up down in Sheffield, and then eventually in 2008, which was a pretty tumultuous year for the mortgage industry.
Absolutely. I've still got some scars on my body from that then.
I was going to say you probably felt it too. That was ironically 3 or 4 months after I started as a mortgage broker. So I'd been doing the hard yards on the administration side of a couple of mortgage businesses and you know, general dog's body, I think was probably the title, and got my exams and thought, yeah, you know, this is it now. I'm going to make my fortune. I'm going to be the guy, again, naive. And then the world ended in the mortgage market. And promptly the company that I worked for, which was a really good business, went from 40-something people to 6.
Did it really?
In 3 months. You know, it just disintegrated. So I think I realised quite quickly then that it was going to be a while before that market came back. And the only place really you could continue doing work in the industry that I'm in now is in London. So made the move down there, tapped a couple of contacts. They gave me a shot. Again, you know, just youthful exuberance. And that was it. So worked in a brokerage in London, learned a lot, very, very different. You know, the pace is different. The
North compared to South,
massive.
difference?
Yeah, massive. The number of foreign nationals you deal with in London, it was a bit of a novelty. Not that you don't get that elsewhere, but that was a huge shift in terms of, wow, okay, this is a really diverse client bank. So you had to learn a lot, and that's where my accent went. Because
went.
Oh,
well, I still think you got it.
Well, not as much as if I'm at the match. But it disappeared because I had to make a conscious effort to tone it down because people didn't understand. And this was pre-Zoom and Teams, and you know, a lot of it was on the phone, and you'd have people saying, sorry, what?
Sorry, yeah.
What was that you said? So it was a conscious effort to reduce it, and then it went, and now it's quite soft.
Well, so I still think and it's a lovely accent area. I still think there's a little twang there.
There's an element. Got to fly the flag.
So you're in the industry.
Yep.
You've obviously had a few bumps on the head in your journey.
Yep.
You've seen a recession before you've even got going.
Yep.
You've up sticks and moved.
Yep.
You're now in the big smoke, so to speak. How did you end up getting into your own business?
There's a theme here that you'll spot, which is the youthful enthusiasm and naivety across the board, because you sort of
lovely things to have, by the way.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look back and think, actually, if I had the mindset I have now, would I have done it? Yeah. You know, if I'd known what I know, would I have? And
probably not. Yeah.
Maybe not. So you're less aware of the risks, and the risks that you do see, you don't see them as being big. So it was a bit of a wing and a prayer. I met my now business partner Warren. We worked together, and we just hit it off. I mean, we are like chalk and cheese. You've met Warren.
Met him, yeah. You are definitely chalk and cheese.
Yeah, I'm the little Geordie bloke, and he's the big posh bloke. And we're very different and very different backgrounds, but it works well, and we sort of complement each other. And I think we could see that straight away, that we felt like we could change something. And at that stage, you're like, yeah, this is going to be great. We'll build a business, and 5 minutes later, somebody's going to buy it, and we'll be off sitting on a beach. And of course,
nobody's come along and bought it yet.
Well, almost. We're sort of part way through. We're very fortunate to have an investor in the business now that's an AIM-listed company. So we're kind of on that journey, but it took a lot longer than we thought. And it's just a constant journey.
Do you enjoy it today as much as you did?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah, but for different reasons. So my job now is so different from what it was. You know, I don't see clients, haven't done for many years. I do miss a little bit of that, because you sort of want to show off your knowledge.
Yeah.
And you'll still get, you know, mates in the pub and what have you asking, you know, what should I do? Should I do a 2-year fix or a 5-year fix? And I have to sort of, I'm not allowed to advise you. I'm not authorised for that now. Get a few more pints and we'll see where we go with that. But it's a very different role that I've got, but I enjoy it. I love it. And it constantly evolves. So my job as I see it now is to drive customers into the business. So there's lots of operational things that I'm responsible for, but ultimately I'm a sort of super business development manager in my own mind.
Yeah.
Well,
it certainly came across when I was sitting there with you that your knowledge was, you were right there in the front line. I could see that.
There are plenty of people that have got more knowledge than me, but I think I do work at it, and I think you have to, particularly when I wouldn't have said I was as naturally gifted as many others. So it's that, that thing of just constantly wanting to learn stuff, because if you're not, then somebody's going to overtake you.
Yeah.
And
if you stand still, I was told years ago by one of my mentors that if you stand still, you go backwards.
You do, and it's the case.
It didn't make sense at the time. It certainly does today.
Well, yeah, you kind of look back, don't you, on these things and think, I know what he was talking about. That's what it was. But it's the KSA thing, isn't it? It's the knowledge skills application, and the knowledge one. I think nowadays, because particularly in our world, the level of information that's available to a consumer is enormous, almost too much, because it can be confusing. But what that means is that I've noticed it over the course of my career, that your average client now is approaching the business with such a high level of knowledge as a start point, because they've done their own research. And why wouldn't you if it was there, right? So if you're not able to outperform that, then you're not an expert. So you've got to be.
It is so different. I mean, when I started my property career, it was in new homes, and then I went for a period of time into a estate agency, which I really didn't enjoy. But I remember somebody coming in, taking them to a viewing, them coming back to the office and saying they wanted to buy it, and me literally getting them a cup of plastic, a coffee in a plastic cup, and walking them down to the building society that was 100 yards from the office, and sticking them with the guy that was the building society manager. And basically they agreed their mortgage in principle in about 25 minutes, which was them actually getting 3 pay slips and a letter to say that they worked there.
If that.
Well, I mean, we were detailed then.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, just so different to
massively
today.
Different. And I think, look, so much of it is good. The industry has cleaned itself up. I mean, 2008, we talked about it. It was a bit of a wake-up call, I think, for not just the mortgage industry, but for the UK economy. There needed to be some checks and balances that perhaps weren't there, and lots of those things that were put in place then. Actually, I think, we may get on to talk about what's been happening recently and the mini budget and trustonomics and all that sort of stuff. But actually, a lot of those things that were put in place post 2008 protected the housing market to an extent. Now, you could argue that the impact in terms of the transaction numbers has been worse this time, which it probably has. But the level of things like repossessions and mortgage arrears, etc., is way down on where it was. And that's largely because
there's a different culture as well now, isn't there? I mean, I remember back in the day, and I think I said this on a previous podcast, that when I was at Legal & General, they had a repossession department.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't the financial crisis.
It's pretty scary, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, weekly, it was very sad. Weekly, there would be a number of, there would be a team of people to go out and repossess people.
Which is awful.
And you look at that today, and that wouldn't be the case.
No, it wouldn't. I mean, the government introduced a mortgage charter at the tail end of last year, I think, to try and deal with some of this stuff. And it's good that you've got, again, checks and balances in place to try and prevent that sort of thing from happening. But I think even withstanding that sort of cultural shift and lenders now trying to do everything but repossess for obvious reasons, even notwithstanding that, I think people are less likely to be in that situation because things like affordability stress testing, etc., it just wasn't really there in 2008, not to any real degree. So what we've now got is a different challenge where, yes, there are absolutely horrible scenarios where people are in a pickle. Let's not make any bones about that. But I think broadly what you've now got is it being a bit more of a choice for people. And affordability is tough. Absolutely it is. But it's possible, and it's about sacrificing other areas, which is a personal choice, and that's a whole can of worms, I think, potentially.
How is the mortgage market at the moment? I look at the mortgage market, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I probably am. I normally am. If you've got 10, 15, 20% deposit, I understand that there's quite a lot of products out there.
Yep.
The stress testing is not quite as severe. The valuation process won't be as severe.
Yep.
But if you are, shall we say, first-time buyers, and you're actually got 5% and maybe 10%, then there's not as many products out there.
Correct.
And not only is there not as many products out there, but the stress testing is much more severe.
Yeah.
And also from a valuation point of view, the surveyor, especially on new stuff. I mean, as you know, we are solely new.
Yeah.
They also are quite severe on the valuation, which, and we go back, we don't want repossessions, we don't want people buying stuff that they can't genuinely afford, but it equally doesn't actually kickstart the market sufficiently enough, is the way I see it. Would that be a good call?
I think you're half right.
See, I've got 50%. That's my highest ever result in any sort of
exam.
exam.
Maybe 40% on downgrade. We'll see where we go. Yeah. So I think you're spot on. I mean, again, we're a bit of a freeze frame in time at the minute where we're recording this, and there was a stat that came out last week that suggested that we've now got more products available in the market than we have done for 2 years. Which makes sense because, you know, at the tail end of 2 years gone, where we had that mini budget, which put a shockwave through everything.
Absolutely.
You know, less said about that, the better. You know, that was just a sort of mass exodus of products. You know, lenders just kind of withdrawing into their shells. They couldn't keep up. They couldn't keep up with their pricing. And so you had a huge just chop through the middle of the market. And we've been gradually seeing more and more products as we go since. Now, what's been really interesting is lenders, I think we need to just recognize that they're ultimately sales organizations, right? So whilst they have to exist within this remit of whatever the FCA sets out in front of them, responsible lending, affordability, etc., they also have their shareholders to keep happy. And much like a house builder would, you know, you've got to try and find a way to make sales. And a mortgage is a sale. You know, you are selling to a customer. So what we've seen recently is lenders trying to find ways to help affordability. Now, that could be looking at additional income sources that maybe they didn't used to look at. So could, you know, lots of people have got a side hustle these days. Lenders bringing out a policy around universal credit to top up what your income might be. Could be a bit of locum work if you're a medical professional. You know, anything and everything whereby people are out there now trying to supplement their income. Lenders are working towards trying to use that income, whereas before maybe they wouldn't have been so interested in it.
Okay.
They're starting to look at criteria. So again, coming back to the foreign national thing, which is particularly pertinent in the southeast, is more lenders accepting customers on a visa, for example, and being a little bit more lenient there. So whilst they've got these shackles around them, which are largely regulatory as far as affordability is concerned, they're having to look at, well, what can we push within our gift to try and improve this situation? And so it's tough. Don't get me wrong. You know, it's very tough, particularly as a first-time buyer, because the barriers to entry are huge. You're looking at a massive multiple of your income being required to buy even an average home, which we didn't have 20, 30 years ago. So that's hard. And I think, you know, we're seeing Bank of Mum and Dad step in. Bank of Mum and Dad, by some measures, is now the fourth largest lender in the UK.
Is it really as high as that?
Which is just kind of not surprising if I think about it, but it is also a bit nuts. Yeah. So you've got a lot of that going on, but I think the real challenges are coming where people perhaps don't have that family assistance.
Correct. Yeah.
It's a tricky one. And then, you know, if we refer back to the new homes market that you've referenced, that's kind of where the builders are trying to step in a little bit and help.
So in terms of help, there's two sides to the help. Is there anything that developers could do which ultimately makes their life better, but to make your life better in the way that I come across lots of different house builders.
Yeah.
And
you're going to introduce me to all of them, obviously.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, this podcast is going to do exactly that. But I come across them, and it, not in every case, but in lots of cases, their understanding and knowledge of the mortgage market is nowhere near what it used to be. I mean, I go back to the days before we released a site, we would have pre-valuations done.
Yeah, and that's pretty rare these days, you know.
Very rare. And then actually, when I tried to go down that route before I met you, it's the surveyors are not interested. Now, surely if back in those days, I mean, I don't know if it's the same, you'll tell me, but the building societies only wanted to take 25% of a development.
Yeah, they've got that exposure limit, which is a kind of internal measure that they set, and it is still there. And I think, to an extent, you're right. We've noticed lack of engagement is going to sound harsh, but there's not really been that much of a need prior to the last 3 years.
And well, that's going to lead me to my next question.
I'm going to take your question from you.
No, it's going to lead me on. Is that because, dare I say this terrible work from home, dare I say it, that this situation of that engagement's a lot harder now, it's by email.
It's really tough. It's really tough. And, you know, there's two parts, right? So, yeah, I think the work from home thing is a challenge. It's a perfectly acceptable model from a business perspective. It's not our model. We believe really strongly in having our team office based. We've got 2 offices at other ends of the country, one in Gateshead up near Newcastle, and then one in Hertfordshire. And whichever office that you're based from, you work there. Yep. And for us, that works really well because you get the camaraderie, you feel like you're part of the team. We value one another, and equally, if you come off a terrible phone call, it's a lot better to have your mate sat next to you to say, "Should you go and have a coffee?" Yeah. Because that sounded, you didn't do anything wrong there, and you might just need an arm around you. And how'd you do that in your bedroom when you sat in your pants, respectfully, on Zoom? So I think there is a bit of that, and we've been on a bit of a crusade to try and push engagement from a broker to builder or a broker to agent point of view.
And I think we certainly need to do that more today, especially with Help to Buy now gone.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And especially with our wonderful Tory government that we have at the moment that have done absolutely cock all for the house building industry.
It's been tough.
Since they have been in power this time around.
Well, I think you've also, if you talk, you could set aside the house building industry, and I agree. I think it's just been one roadblock after another. It's, I'm not going to go there with all the nutrient stuff, which you'll be an expert on far more than I am. And
I've never been called an expert, by the way.
Well, I'll give you that. You were nice to me earlier, so it's 1-1. The challenges around planning. I'm not the guy to talk about that because you've got other experts. But I think you could also look at areas like landlords. Since George Osborne implemented a policy that essentially began a ticking time bomb on being a landlord, that's another area that they've sort of hammered the property market. So you've ended up in this perfect storm, really, of rising prices that are sort of making things very difficult for first-time buyers to get involved unless they've got a wealthy family member who can help them. You've got landlords who are almost being pushed away from the market, so that stock's disappearing. Yeah. And you end up with all of this kind of BTR, enormous, monolithic stuff out there that's trying to swallow up market.
That doesn't do quite as well as people think it does. It is a good model, but it's not. It needs a positive market for it to happen.
Yeah, I agree, and I also
especially where build costs have
gone.
The consumer. Build costs have gone in the last 3 years. That's actually been a real sort of roadblock.
Yeah, massively, and I think just coming back to your point on builders themselves, what we have seen, which has been really encouraging, is that there's more of an openness and a willingness now to want to learn. I think there's an acceptance that Help to Buy was a great product for selling. For
me, I agree.
I think it's had a bit of a bad name, and I think that's unfortunate.
I don't think there's anything that's ever perfect, is there?
Well, no, it doesn't exist. And you've had successive ministers who've had a pop at Help to Buy, and did it or didn't it contribute to price escalation? That's for somebody else who's an economist to answer. But to my mind, it helped a lot of first-time buyers get on the ladder who wouldn't have otherwise. It allowed a lot of first-time buyers to maybe skip 2 rungs on their housing journey, so they probably saved themselves some stamp duty there. And it also has made the taxpayer money. So, if you look at the statistics around it...
One of the biggest revenue.
It's a huge revenue driver. So
crazy.
Okay, you've got some question marks around valuations. You touched on that and the new home space. But again, I don't know how long we got left on this, but we could start to talk about the new build premium, because is it a new build premium anymore? Or are we going to look at the fact that your energy efficient home is the direction to travel? And actually, should that then be valued appropriately? Yeah. So, if you've got a home that's an EPC rating of an A or a B, well, there's more longevity in that home, because in theory, you haven't got to do anything to maintain that status. So I think the new build premium for me is something that's been sort of kicked around as a bit of terminology and almost a negative to throw at people who wanted to buy a new home. Whereas now I think we need to look at it in line with the country's focus on sustainability, the ESG strategy of lenders, house builders, etc. And that's something that we should discuss, isn't it? I mean,
I think so. I think, you mentioned regulations. I think that, and I think you could take that into this world today that people are scared to talk.
Well, yeah, there's a bit of that.
And I think that back in the day, because I'm a dinosaur, back in the day, mortgage, when we come to release a site, probably 2-3 months before the release of the site, I never did a development where we didn't know that we had valuations in order.
Yeah.
And we had various mortgage sources to go to. The percentage of the loan we didn't know, because we didn't know what was going to walk through the door.
Yeah.
I think now that we in the house building industry go, oh, well, we can't talk about that. We can't even go. There's no reference to it.
Yeah,
it's
which
like
I think is wrong, by the way.
It is wrong, but
Yeah.
I think that's where we are.
Yeah.
And again, I can't put everyone in that group,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of house builders that I don't think are proactive enough, working with organisations like yourself,
Yeah.
to make sure that we're answering some of those questions before prospective purchasers walk in the
Yeah, I
door.
think you're right, and I think it's how you phrase it really is the key, because we are in a sort of litigation era, aren't we?
Very much so.
Sadly.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the root cause here, is that if you're asking a surveyor or a lender to give an opinion, you know, their experience has taught them that can be costly if they get it wrong.
Yep.
So to me, and whenever we do this, and we do it, if we engage with one of the big surveyors or one of the large-scale new build lenders and basically ask them for an opinion, you've got to approach it right, and you've got to let them know that you're not going to hang them over it.
No.
You know, you're not going to call them to account if something's, you know, if a decimal place is out of place. And all you want to try and do is collaborate with them to make sure you're not on the wrong track.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing wrong with that, right?
No.
So, but I think the challenge is that if you don't go about it in that way, and you know, proactively contact a big surveyor and you say, come down at my site and give me a pre-valuation, they're going to run a mile. They're going to run a mile because they're going to be petrified that you get it wrong, or they get it wrong, and then you're going to be after them.
But the sad thing is that when we sell that property to Mr. Smith,
Yeah.
and they're going to have to come and value it anyway.
Of course they are.
And then if they've got it wrong, because the market moved, they've got it wrong.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. If it was we were going to buy it and we're trying to actually do something fraudulent,
Yeah.
I get it. But your mortgage product's in the market.
Yeah.
If they make an application,
Yeah.
you're only preempting the
Yeah.
situation. I mean, we still have it on developments where I think that sometimes valuers want to keep the levels down here.
Yeah, I mean, that's a school of thought.
I've seen it firsthand. I've got it going on at the moment.
Right, okay.
And I just don't get that logic again. It seems as though, let's stop people buying. I feel that way at times.
Yeah, and I feel that way at times as well. I think it's a perception out there. I think you will get certain surveyors, and I don't want to turn this into a surveyor bashing session, but you will get certain surveyors who, for whatever reason, just disagree with a particular scheme, and take it upon themselves, I think, to sort of make that point known. And that can be really difficult. And that's why it's really important to do what you mentioned, which is engage at the outset.
Early doors,
and engage with somebody senior at again, one of the major surveyors. And what's been really nice is they've been appointing really good people into those roles in the last 2 or 3 years.
That's nice to hear.
And there is a willingness to engage, albeit that they're mindful that they don't want to overcommit. But I think if you accept that they're not going to overcommit, they're never going to send you an email and say, yeah, everyone's going to get a mortgage here, everything's going to value it, it's all going to be fine.
Not at all. But and do it in phases.
Yeah.
But actually just help the process. No, don't worry about the fact we've got 500 of these to sell.
Yeah.
Let's actually start with 15 of them.
Yeah, exactly. And see where we go.
And see where we go.
Yeah, and see where we go.
But one thing I do want to say is that the people that are watching the podcast, and the numbers are growing, and I'm forever grateful, but put it down to the quality of the people that come on the show, you being one of them.
That's kind of
our age group, generally speaking, is 24 to 40-year-olds.
Okay.
And you mentioned earlier being in the pub with your mates. Without crossing any regulations, is there any 3 things that you could say for perspective? And I'm particularly interested in first-time buyers, not because the product I sell is mainly that.
Yep.
That is the case, but that's not the reason.
Yep.
But we need first-time buyers.
We do.
Even if it's for the second-hand market,
Yeah,
as
of
well
course.
as the
It's about the circular promotion of the market.
So what 3 points, now you're going to have a really good imagination here. If I'm 40 years younger,
Okay.
how...
You'd be 10.
Thank you very much. You definitely got the job. Definitely got the job. See, wearing a Newcastle shirt gets you everywhere. What 3 things, if I'm looking to buy,
Yeah.
I'm in full-time employment,
Yeah.
what 3 things do I need to get in order to walk into Heron Financial
Yep.
or wherever I go
Yep.
to help me get an agreed mortgage in principle, to get me on that so I can walk to site this weekend, I can go into the estate agent, wherever I'm going to do it, and say, I've got this in principle.
I'm ready to go.
What 3 things would help?
So first one is going to sound like a really daft one, but know what your income is.
Yep.
So most people will never open the PDF payslip that they receive once a month out of the employer's software.
I'm self-employed, I don't know what that means.
Well, most self-employed people will never look at their tax return. They just sign off whatever their account says.
Mine's simple now. It's easy. It's nothing.
Of course,
no profit.
So yeah, obviously, most people, although they think they know what they earn, they actually really don't, because ultimately it's what do you earn on paper that's important. So if we take the employed person, for example, and I'll rattle through these. So if you do get a pay slip, what is your net pay? Are there any deductions? Are you contributing to a pension? Have you got a cycle to work scheme? Have you got a gym membership? All of this stuff is really important from a lender perspective, particularly when affordability is tight as it is right now. So silly one, but open your pay slip and actually understand what you earn. Okay. If you get bonus or commission, have a look at your last two P60s, because that's most likely what the lender's going to want. What did that look like? So a lender will base their judgment on the tax you pay. If you're self-employed, again, rather than just signing off whatever your account says, have a look at your tax return. Have a look at your limited company accounts. What do they show? Because whichever route you go down, you're going to need to be able to prove that income. So that's the first thing. Second one is your credit score. So just make sure that you're aware of it. And there's plenty of options now to sign up for a free trial at Experian or Equifax or TransUnion. Right.
Does that go against you if you? I've always, if someone sees you've looked at your credit score, that goes against you. Not
if you're looking at it yourself. Right. So go and sign up, have a look yourself. The one that we often see on there that trips people up is not being on the electoral roll. So, we've touched on politics. Even if you don't give a hoot about who's in power, which who can blame you, then get yourself on the electoral roll, because that matters a lot for your credit score.
Does it?
Yeah,
I never knew that.
Well, it's the ultra verification of your address and who you are. So get yourself on it if you're not. It's not the same as your council tax. So if you pay council tax, don't assume you're on the electoral roll. We see that a lot. So have a look at your credit score. If it's bad, don't worry. You just need to engage with somebody. And then the third one is sort of not mortgage related, but it's something that we think is important for any buyer, is have a good idea of where you want to live. Because actually what we find is that if you have this really broad map of, well, we could live there and we could live there, particularly if you're moving out of London or you're looking for... Yeah.
I'm coming out of Central, I'm coming out of the East End of London, and I want to go to Essex.
I'm willing to go all these places.
Yeah, Essex is a big place.
It's huge. And I think you then end up, honestly, with this kind of decision fatigue, because there's too much. So before you've even got to that point of talking to your mortgage advisor, so you know what your income is, you've seen your credit report, you're well aware of how it looks. Find out where you want to be. Go and take some trips there. Go and have a look around your show home. Because until you're committed to that sort of part of town or that postcode, you think, yeah, we can see ourselves being there, you won't make the decision. And we see that a lot. So people talk to us in the early stages of that process, and they're not ready. We can give them all the mortgage advice they want, but actually they're not going to find somewhere for 6 or 8 months because they don't know where they want to live. Yeah. And then the whole thing's changed.
And when you and I had a little phone call just to talk about the events of today, you mentioned something to me that, and I'm quoting you, and if I'm wrong, tell me, that you were seeing a little bit that people were very quick to change their mind, not on what they wanted to buy, but whether or not they wanted to buy it at the moment because of other daily things that were in their life that they didn't want to sacrifice. When I was growing up, you saved for a deposit, which I know people do today, but you realised if you moved into this apartment, your social life was going to take a little bit of a change. But that was quite cool at the time, because you were
a grown-up.
Well, at the time I had friends. You were going to get friends to come round and share.
What happened to them?
Yeah, they've all gone. I've got no friends now. I'm normally no mates.
Yeah.
But
we've got this,
Well, no, we're building a friendship. It's working. But no, is that the case? You see a little bit of that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is. Look, I don't want to be offensive, but because buying a house today is without a doubt more challenging than it ever has been. So let's make no bones about that, because if you look at the sort of mortgage situation at the moment, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. So if you'd have been buying your house 25 years ago, your utility bills weren't as big a commitment as they currently are. The average property price wasn't as big a multiple of your income as it is right now. So take what I say here with a pinch of salt. And of course, the argument will be rolled out, well, interest rates used to be 14% and I was all right. Yep. But you didn't have that other stuff going on.
No.
Your house was a lot cheaper, etc. But what we are seeing is a big reduction in people who can't afford, which is good. We're seeing affordability improve, and that's largely because rates have started to come down, and hopefully that's a trend that we're going to see over the course of this year. It's now moving towards well, I know I can technically afford it, and I know the bank are telling me that mortgage payment is within my capabilities.
Yep.
But I don't want to do it because it's a bit much. And actually, we like having 2 cars, and we like having 3 holidays, and we have got the private school.
Can I go and live with them, by the way?
Yeah, I've got loads of them. They don't buy. So I think that's something that we've noticed. And I'm not criticising that view, but I think it's just an interesting trend. I think it's something just to take note of, that people are putting lifestyle ahead of home ownership.
I've seen it in certain areas, and I won't mention them.
Yeah.
Certain areas where we've sold new property,
right,
where you think affluent, you think that the apartments are fantastic.
Yeah.
But certainly when they've come along, that choice of lifestyle, being seen, with the right kind of shirt on, that kind of thing has been a real big important thing in their decision process.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. I mean, I don't know how long that will last, because I think there's an element of today's interest rates, today's mortgage payments being still slightly novel. I think people are getting a bit more used to it. But if all you've ever known is 1.something%,
it's a shock, isn't it?
This is a shock.
Yeah. And not only that, but your credit cards,
everything,
everything,
car finance, which is through the roof.
Yeah.
There's a reason, that industry is having the challenges.
Yeah.
So I think that will we still have this in 2 years, and when we've got rates potentially similar to what they are today? Who knows? But it's definitely something we've seen.
A couple of things I just want to touch on. One is, I'm always interested in emotional wellness. Because of my own challenges. You strike me as someone that, I say this about a lot of people that I know that I come across that are really lovely people. They always leave me feeling a little bit brighter, a little bit perkier. And when I finished on it, and we had our telephone call was a bit political. It was about the market. I mean, you could have easily come away sitting there thinking, oh my God.
Doom.
But when I put do you find it, how do you deal with your emotional wellness? Because you just look as though you're like just one of those sort of people that just keeps going, you're smiling all the time. Is that, am I getting the right feeling, or do you have your bad days?
Yeah, I have my bad days. I mean, you can ask my team in the office, they'll know when I have those bad days. But yeah, it's been a bit of an effort over the last year and a bit. I think as an industry, we've sort of felt it, haven't we? And at times, I've found myself flagging where perhaps I wouldn't have done before. And that needed me to then step back for a couple of days and just kind of gather myself a little bit. But I'm an optimist. Maybe that's to a fault. Maybe that's that's why I keep fumbling into things. But I prefer to be optimistic, because if you're not, well, what's the point, right?
No, absolutely. I agree with that.
It's one of those things where I've sort of had that drummed into me, and it just becomes your way of being. Now, as I said, the last 12 months have challenged that, right? It's been hard. But if you just keep bringing yourself back to that mindset, and it's all the stuff that we know about, mindfulness, a bit of meditation, exercise is massive for me. If I don't exercise, I'm a grumpy bear wandering around my other half saying, will you get out there and go for a run, or will you get on that exercise bike, because you're doing my head in. And so, it's those simple things that we need to do. But yeah, I guess I'm just a natural optimist, and that helps.
And the other thing I like to ask is, because, I think charities, I mention this all the time, that, Great Britain the British public gives so much to charity. And in recessionary times, we're in a recession. That gets tough. Is there any charities that are close to your heart?
Yeah, so we support a charity called Create Arts,
right?
Which is a children's charity. They primarily focus on disadvantaged children. It's often children who would be the main carer in their household. So perhaps they've got a dependent adult who's disabled or something along those lines. And largely these are often kids who they don't really get to be kids.
Really.
And whilst the charity has grown, which has been great to witness, to cover lots of different areas, that's always the part of what they do that's kind of stuck with me. That this, I've got a couple of kids, and this idea of them not being able to do those things, and it's not, it kind of makes me chill a little bit, where they try and introduce musical instruments, they try and introduce art, they try and get them together with other kids that are in the same boat as them. And it might only be for an afternoon, but they get to be a kid for an afternoon. So yeah, we've supported them for many years, and great charity. If anyone's watching, check them out, because they do some really good stuff.
Well, we talk about time. I talk about the quality of people that comes on the show, which makes this show, trust me. Believe it or not, our time's gone. I certainly know.
Well, I saw you glancing.
I certainly know that we was on the phone for a long time. You've been exactly what I thought you would be when I met you back in September at the Farnham Homes charity do.
Thank you.
Your knowledge is first class. It's been a pleasure for me.
Pleasure
that you've managed to come on find the time to come on the show. Really enjoyed the company. I know you're going to hang around.
Yeah.
And I know we'll be talking mortgages for a little while. We might even get a pint or two in.
For sure.
But I just
you've got to keep your Newcastle top on for that as well.
Okay, well, maybe we'll have 16 pints on that basis.
Yeah.
At least
and then you take it off,
well,
obviously, because then you're a real Geordie.
I'll tell you what, if I take it off, that pub will clear out before you know it. I'm telling you that. But
All
Matt, thank you very much for your time. It's been an
Steve.
absolute pleasure. Thank you. Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Viewers, listeners to Blighty Talks Bricks, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that are going to watch this podcast a few times over, because I think there's a couple of fantastic nuggets that have come out there from Matt. We've got a lot of work to do as house builders in terms of giving the opportunity for people to buy, and I'm sure that the people listening looking for mortgages are going to find some stuff. Good luck with Heron Financial.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm just going to say to the viewers and listeners, goodbye, stay safe, take care, love you lots, see you soon.